This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Bolduan. This is CNN's special live coverage of a historic moment in our nation's capital and our nation's history. The swearing in of Neil Gorsuch as the 113th Justice of the Supreme Court. This happening any moment now. This will be, of course, part 2 of his official moments today. We have new photos just released of part 1, showing Gorsuch taking the constitutional oath administered, as you see right there, by Chief Justice John Roberts. That happened in a private ceremony at the Supreme Court just a short time ago. And now his public swearing-in ceremony is about to begin. You're looking at live pictures from the Rose Garden at the White House. Despite the drama leading up to this moment, it is no doubt a huge moment for President Trump. His pick to the highest court in the land will be taking the judicial oath just moments from now. It will be administered this time by Justice Anthony Kennedy, who Gorsuch once clerked for. This adds another bit of history to this day. This will be the first time ever that a justice will serve alongside one of his former clerks. Along with the official swearing in, we expect to hear from the president and also from the man of the hour, the 49-year-old appeals court judge from Colorado who is about to take a lifetime position on the Supreme Court bench. Very important news happening this hour. Jeff Zeleny is at the White House watching it all. He's in the Rose Garden where the ceremony is about to begin. Jeff, they could not have asked for better weather. It looks absolutely gorgeous in the Rose Garden. This is a big moment for the president, certainly a big moment for Neil Gorsuch. This is also a big moment for the country.
No question about it, Kate. It is a sunsplash day here in Washington, really, the height of spring here in the Rose Garden. And you can say this is probably one of the biggest moments as well of the Trump presidency so far, Poppy. Kate, there have been some highs and lows, of course, throughout, the first 11, 12 weeks of this administration. But the selection of Judge Gorsuch was certainly one of the highs. And now the fact that he is being sworn in is certainly part of the Trump legacy, no question. And he has Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican majority leader, obviously, to help thanks for this, because as we saw last week, they changed the rules of the Senate, which is historic as well. But Judge Gorsuch will sit on this Supreme Court for potentially 30 years or so, perhaps longer. 49 years old, as you said. He'll be here in the Rose Garden with the president. The last time he was here at the White House, of course, was when he was announced by this president. And as one of the in terms of the strategic choices, was viewed as the highlight of this administration, and now today is the culmination of all that. And you said the fact about Justice Kennedy as well, historic as well, that he will be swearing in someone who worked for him as on the Supreme Court as a young man, and now the judge will be being sworn in as the 113th Justice. So, Kate, this is probably going to go down as the biggest accomplishment of the Trump administration in the first 100 days or so. We are nearing that benchmark here at the end of April. But one of the challenges, of course, is what else will they get done? But at least for now, at this moment, in this sunny day in Washington, the Trump administration is breathing a sigh of relief and smiling that they have their first appointment to the Supreme Court. And we talked to President Trump last week when he flew down to Mar-a-Lago. He said that he believes he will get other appointments as well. Justice Kennedy, his retirement is one of the most talked about things here in Washington. If he retires at the end of this Supreme Court session in June or maybe next year, but he has told his friends and confidants that he expects to. So this is the first of possibly many, at least a couple Supreme Court appointments to this court by this president. Kate.
And it all begins right now. This is a moment that this president has been waiting for. This is a moment that, as you said, Mitch McConnell has been holding out for and waiting for since the campaign until now. Right. A very big moment for everybody. Jeff Zeleny is in the Rose Garden. We're waiting any moment for the president to walk out. Jeff is there. But first, let's quickly go over, when we talk about, there's really no rest for the weary here. The newly minted Justice Gorsuch will have to hit the ground running and fast, and getting seated just in time, really to help the court finish out its current term with some very weighty issues. CNN Supreme Court reporter Ariane DeVogue is joining me now from the steps of the Capitol. Ariane, as I go to you, I'm just looking, you see some of the justices walking in right now. I see Justice Ginsburg, Justice Thomas, and I think right back there is Chief Justice John Roberts. All of the justices are expected to be present for this swearing in, Ariane.
Well, yeah, this is a big day, right? It's been over a year since Scalia died. And you are absolutely right, Kate. No rest for the weary, right? Because Gorsuch has completed that grueling confirmation process. He met with over 80 senators. He did over 20 hours of congressional testimony. And now he's got to get to work. As early as Thursday, he will meet behind closed doors for the closed-door regular conference with his new colleagues. And they'll discuss cases that could be coming to the court, haven't been accepted yet. But there's some big issues there. There's a Second Amendment case about conceal and carry. There's a voter ID case about North Carolina's strict voter ID law that was struck below. And there's an interesting religious liberty case about a cake artist who did not want to make a cake to celebrate the wedding reception of a same-sex couple. Those are big, meaty issues. The court could take some of them. And then not only that, next week he takes the bench for the first time. He'll wear that robe and he'll start hearing cases. So he hasn't had a chance much to catch his breath, Kate.
Absolutely. And perfect timing, Ariane. We're now seeing President Trump walking out right now. Let's take a moment. Huge moment for this president and the country. The swearing in of Judge Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Friends and distinguished guests, welcome to the White House. We are gathered here today for a truly momentous occasion in our democracy, the swearing in of a United States Supreme Court justice. In particular, I'm greatly honored to welcome to these grounds every sitting justice of the United States Supreme Court. Welcome. Thank you. Mr. Chief Justice and fellow justices, it's a privilege to have you here to join in this historic moment on this very beautiful spring day in the Rose Garden. Spring is really the perfect backdrop for this joyful gathering of friends because together we are in a process of reviewing and renewing and also rebuilding our country. A new optimism is sweeping across our land, and a new faith in America is filling our hearts and lifting our sights. I'd also like to recognize Senator Cory Gardner. Here's Cory Gardner. Mike Lee. Where's Mike? He's around here someplace. Thank you. And Mike Crapo. Good. Hi, Mike. Thank you very much and for all your work. Thank you. And although he could not be here today, I especially want to express our gratitude to Senator Mitch McConnell for all that he did to make this achievement possible. So thank you, Mitch. I'd also like to give my appreciation to Chairman Grassley for conducting such a fair and professional confirmation. Senator Grassley. Where is Senator Grassley? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Finally, a profound thank you to Louise Gorsuch and to all of the Gorsuch family. Thank you. And Louise, I've heard it firsthand. I know what a total inspiration you are to your husband and to your entire family. So thank you very much. Fantastic. Thank you very much. We are here to celebrate history, the taking of the judicial oath by the newest member of the United States Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch. Justice Gorsuch, I just want to congratulate you and your entire family. It's something so special. In fact, I've always heard that the most important thing that a president of the United States does is appoint people, hopefully great people like this appointment, to the United States Supreme Court. And I can say this is a great honor. And I got it done in the first 100 days. That's even nice. You think that's easy? This ceremony has special meaning as Justice Gorsuch is filling the seat of one of the greatest Supreme Court judges in American history, and that's Antonin Scalia, who was a terrific judge and a terrific person. Justice Scalia was a patriot who revered our Constitution. He was beloved by many, very many, who are here today, and he is deeply missed by all of us. I want to, at this time, recognize his incredible wife, Maureen, who I got to know very well over the last short period of time. And Maureen, please stand up. Thank you very much. Thank you and your family. Thank you. Thank you, Maureen. Americans are blessed to have in Neil Gorsuch a man who will likewise be a devoted servant of the law. Over the past 2 months, the American people have gotten to know, respect, and truly admire our newest member of the United States Supreme Court. In Justice Gorsuch, they see a man of great and unquestioned integrity. They see a man of unmatched qualifications. And most of all, and most importantly, they see a man who is deeply faithful to the Constitution of the United States. He will decide cases based not on his personal preferences, but based on a fair and objective reading of the law. Today, we have all three branches of government represented at this event. It is a very special thing and a very special happening. And it's worth taking just a minute to remember what it all means. In our founders' incredible wisdom, they gave each branch of government a different role in our great republic. We have a Congress to write the laws on behalf of the people. We have a president to enforce those laws and defend our nation. And we have a Supreme Court to apply and interpret the law in a fair and impartial manner when disagreements arise. The founders separated power because they knew it was the best way to protect our citizens and keep our Constitution secure. Justice Gorsuch, you are now entrusted with the sacred duty of defending our Constitution. Our country is counting on you to be wise, impartial, and fair, to serve under our laws, not over them, and to safeguard the right of the people to govern their own affairs. I have no doubt you will rise to the occasion and that the decisions you will make will not only protect our Constitution today, but for many generations of Americans to come. In just a moment, Justice Gorsuch will be sworn in by Justice Kennedy, a great man of outstanding accomplishment. Throughout his nearly 30 years on the Supreme Court, Justice Kennedy has been praised by all for his dedicated and dignified service. We owe him an enormous debt of gratitude, and I am honored that he is with us today. This is a very, very special moment because many years ago, a young Neil Gorsuch started his legal career as a law clerk to Justice Kennedy. You remember that, right? It is a fitting testament to Justice Kennedy's impact that upon giving the oath to Justice Gorsuch, he will become the first ever Supreme Court justice to serve with one of his former law clerks. That's sort of a big deal, isn't it? Sort of like that. That's sort of good. It has never happened before. That's pretty good. It also shows you have a lot of respect for this man. It's very good. We're thrilled to share this historic moment with Justice Kennedy, with all of you here today, and with all Americans watching us at home. Justice Gorsuch, I again congratulate you and your entire family, and I wish God's blessings on your amazing journey ahead. I have no doubt you will go down as one of the truly great justices in the history of the United States Supreme Court. I now invite Justice Kennedy to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chief Justice, Justice Gorsuch, and my fellow adherents to the idea and the reality of the rule of law. As many of you know, there are two oaths that a member of the federal judiciary must take. The first is the constitutional oath that so many of you are familiar with. It applies to all three branches of the government. The second oath is one that applies just to federal judges. Both of the oaths date from the founding of the Republic. The judicial oath dates from 1789. And both of these oaths remind us that we as a people are bound together. We as a people find our self-definition, our respect, our heritage, and our destiny in the Constitution. And so, Justice Gorsuch, there is one oath remaining for you to take, the judicial oath, before you may receive and accept your commission from the President of the United States. Are you ready, Justice Gorsuch, to take the oath? Are you ready to take the oath, Justice Gorsuch? Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Neil M. Gorsuch, do solemnly swear.
I, Neil M. Gorsuch, do solemnly swear
that I will administer justice without respect to persons.
that I will administer justice without respect to persons
And do equal right to the poor and to the rich.
and do equal right to the poor and to the rich,
And that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent upon me
as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States,
as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States,
under the Constitution and laws of the United States.
under the Constitution and laws of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
I see before me so many to whom I owe so much. I know I would not be here today without your friendship and support. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank the President for nominating me and for the great confidence and trust he's reposed in me. I want to thank the Vice President for his constant encouragement and friendship throughout this process. It's not possible to mention here everyone I should mention. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the President's counsel, Don McGahn, and Mark Paoletta, the Vice President's counsel, and every single person in the White House counsel's office for their tremendous and tireless support. I want to thank Kelly Ayotte and my day-to-day team for their humor, for their sage advice, for their faith, as we spent months and so many miles trooping together through the Senate complex. I want to thank every single person, and there are so many, in the White House and the Department of Justice who worked through so many late nights and long weeks on my behalf. I want to thank too Senator McConnell and Senator Grassley and their excellent teams for their support and leadership. And I must thank my former law clerks and my dear friends who gave so much of themselves so selflessly through these last 3 months. You are dear to me. This is truly your doing, and this is your day. I wish I could mention each of you by name, but you know who you are, and you know your names are etched in my heart forever. This process has reminded me just how outrageously blessed I am in my law clerks, and in my family, and in my friends. And I hope that I may continue to rely on each of you as I face this new challenge. To my former colleagues and the wonderful staff of the 10th Circuit, I thank you for your faithful service and your friendship over so many years. To my new colleagues and the staff of the Supreme Court, thank you for the very warm welcome. I look forward to many happy years together. And I cannot tell you how honored I am to have here today my mentor, Justice Kennedy, administer the judicial oath, a beautiful oath, as he did for me 11 years ago when I became a circuit judge. To the Scalia family, I won't ever forget that the seat I inherit today is that of a very, very great man. To my wife, Louise, and my daughters, Emma and Bindi, thank you for your perseverance and your patience, your courage and your love. I simply could not have attempted this without you. And to the American people, I am humbled by the trust placed in me today. I will never forget that to whom much is given, much will be expected. And I promise you that I will do all my powers permit to be a faithful servant of the Constitution and laws of this great nation. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated until the justices of
And with that, Neil Gorsuch becomes the 113th Supreme Court Justice. The Supreme Court is now officially a full 9. Once again, Jeffrey Toobin has been sitting with me here throughout. Jeffrey, before I bring everyone else in, just your thoughts on the ceremony today.
Well, there's Justice Clarence Thomas is behind him is on the right is Justice Stephen Breyer. We see Justice Samuel Alito, Sonia Sotomayor.
Justice Ginsburg walking out with me.
Justice Ginsburg, yeah. Let's just, you don't see these folks on television very much. It's where there's Justice Kagan.
And that's Antonin Scalia's wife walking out behind Justice
Kagan.
That's
right. And that was Eugene Scalia, Justice Scalia's son, who's a prominent lawyer in Washington. Jeffrey Manier, who's the counselor to the Chief Justice, the gray-haired gentleman right there. This is not a major event just in the history of the Trump administration. It's a major event in American history. These do not take place very often. These are important events, and these people have a lot of power over issues that we cannot even imagine at this point. You know, one of my favorite lines about the Supreme Court by Justice Robert Jackson, he said, "We are not final because we are infallible. We are infallible because we are final." Somebody has to have the last word in American politics and in American life, and it's the Supreme Court. And we now know that there are 9 justices, and the fact that Donald Trump defeated Hillary in 2000, this different nomination, Neil Gorsuch as opposed to Merrick Garland or whoever Hillary Clinton might have named, is really perhaps the biggest difference, biggest consequence of that electoral result.
Also joining us right now is Joan Biskupic. She's a CNN legal analyst and Supreme Court biographer, and Nia Malika Henderson, CNN senior political reporter. Joan, these are those moments, as Jeffrey perfectly lays out, that I always wonder kind of what is going through Neil Gorsuch's mind. How much has his life just changed?
Totally, and I also wondered, you know, about thought bubbles above the other justices too, because this is the start of a new chapter, and these events at the White House have always had some hoopla to it, but this time there seemed to be much more. The president spoke longer than usual for a president in that situation. He actually brought in some political themes. Jeff just referred to Mitch McConnell, who the president thanked. The president has Mitch McConnell to thank on 2 fronts. First of all, for getting the rules changed that allow new Justice Gorsuch to be confirmed, but also to have the seat held for more than 400 days during the remaining part of Barack Obama's term. And I thought it was interesting the way President Trump used the moment to talk about this beautiful spring day, this new beginning in America, a lot of political themes that you don't often see at this time. But I think, to get to your question there, Kate, about what Justice Gorsuch must be thinking, you know, what a wonderful event. He will be seated in just a couple days to decide the law of the land. It's for life. He can say or do whatever he wants. It's unlikely that anybody would touch him, and he'll have such an important role in deciding, as I said, the law for all of us.
And Nia, as Joan points out, the president, in his opening remarks, he was really hitting a very optimistic tone, talking about spring as the perfect backdrop. He said that we're in the process of reviewing, renewing, and also rebuilding our nation. A new optimism is sweeping across the land. This is a much-needed big win for this president. You could kind of see it in his upbeat tone there.
That's right. You could see it in some of that language, renewing, rebuilding, and reviewing is somewhat new. I mean, he had touched on that a bit earlier in some of his rallies in Florida, for instance, a couple of months ago. But you can tell this is kind of a new chapter for him, at least this week, at least with this event. And he touched on it. He said he was able to do this in the first 100 days, sort of patting himself on the back in that speech and saying it wasn't easy to do that. And Joan alluded to all of the things that had to go into making this moment happen for Donald Trump. I do think when you look at sort of the wins from this first 100 days, this will be top of the list. I think the question is, what are the other wins that are going to come from this White House, from this administration? Gorsuch, of course, will sit on the bench. And a lot of people, particularly from the far right and conservatives, are really going to be looking at this justice to see whether or not he's in the mold of John Roberts, who in many ways disappointed a lot of conservatives because he upheld parts of Obamacare, or if he's going to be in the mold of somebody like Clarence Thomas or of course, Justice Scalia, who he's replacing. So that'll be interesting, and he'll get an opportunity really off the bat with some of these court cases that are before the Supreme Court already to really, I think, curry favor with some folks in the far right, sort of evangelical communities that were a little nervous about some of his answers around Roe v. Wade and same-sex marriage and religious liberty from those really long confirmation hearings.
Very 20-plus hours of confirmation hearings. I want to get to what people think of his style in just one second, as you were alluding to, Nia. But Jeffrey, I think we both could have heard wrong. But after the swearing in and after the swearing in, it did seem that President Trump leaned in and said, "Go get him," a couple times. What is in in the theme of going and getting them, what is the week ahead like for Neil Gorsuch? Laid out.
Well, he's been given briefs to read, even though he hasn't been a justice yet. So he is going to have to sit in the justices' conference where they decide which cases they're going to take. And then next Monday, he's going to hear arguments. But, you know, there is a weirdness about these events. Justice John Paul Stevens, who served on the court for longer than almost anybody, didn't like having justices appear at the White House for swearing in. You know, here you had Justice Gorsuch praising the White House counsel, praising Mitch McConnell, praising Chairman Grassley. He's going to rule on cases in a matter of days where they are participants in the cases. So, you know, there's a reason why you don't usually see Supreme Court justices at White House events, because the White House has an extremely strong interest in how these cases come out. They have a Solicitor General's office that files briefs. The fact that the Supreme Court justices are essentially at a pep rally for one political party is something that you can sort of understand why it happens, but it makes some of them uncomfortable.
Well, there was, and I don't know if it falls in the line of irony, but there seems to be maybe a little bit of irony of welcoming the new justice in, just as you possibly, this president could be trying to welcome the retirement of another justice who is standing on the stage as well, Anthony Kennedy, of course, as we're talking about there. But a huge moment for this president and for this country, as we've discussed. Great to see you all. Thank you so much. Coming up for us, what is President Trump's policy on Syria? Depends on who you ask. Why his team doesn't seem to be on the same page right now, just days after striking the Assad regime. Plus, drama inside the palace, also known as palace intrigue. President Trump's deputy national security advisor is heading out. He's also telling his son-in-law and top advisor to work it out. We'll discuss. And a massive manhunt is underway for a man who sent President Trump a manifesto. New details on his letter, why he's been able to elude police so far, and what he stole just before going on the run. We'll be right back. Strong words following the first U.S. military strike against the Assad regime in Syria. Strong words, but a conflicting message, leaving a lot of people wondering what is the president's official policy towards Syria right now. President Trump's top two diplomats, the ambassador to the UN and his Secretary of State, they seem to be on different pages.
We are hopeful that we can work with Russia and use their influence to achieve areas of stabilization throughout Syria and create the conditions for a political process through Geneva in which we can engage all of the parties on a way forward. And it is through that political process that we believe the Syrian people will ultimately be able to decide the fate of Bashar al-Assad.
There's not any sort of option where a political solution is going to happen with Assad at the head of the regime. It just, if you look at his actions, if you look at the situation, it's going to be hard to see a government that's peaceful and stable with Assad.
So do they want Assad out or not? Let's go to CNN's senior international correspondent, Clarissa Ward. She's near the Turkish-Syrian border right now. So, Clarissa, the world is waiting to hear what President Trump has planned in terms of what's next for the U.S. posture towards a war-torn country. What is the impact of hearing what sure seems to be one thing from the UN ambassador and another from the Secretary of State?
Yeah, I mean, there's a very clear discrepancy, Kate, between what we heard from Nikki Haley and what we heard from Rex Tillerson. Nikki Haley making it very clear that she thinks that one of the U.S.'s top priorities, along with fighting ISIS, is somehow expediting the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad, whereas Tillerson singing a slightly different tune, reiterating this idea that the fight against ISIS is America's priority in terms of its Syria policy, although he did also allow for the caveat that he doesn't see how there can be stability inside Syria with President Bashar al-Assad as president. Meanwhile, if you look at what's happening inside Syria, we know, of course, that Syrian jets are taking off again from the runway and from the airbase that was struck by the U.S. on Friday. Airstrikes have been continuing, particularly across Idlib province. That is the last sort of rebel stronghold inside Syria. So there hasn't been a huge effect on the ground. then again, the stated purpose of these strikes by the Trump administration were not to take out the runway, were not to stop ordinary airstrikes, but what they called a measured and proportional response to the use of chemical weapons. So at this stage, I think there's a sense that not a whole lot has changed on the ground, but the question becomes, has a whole lot changed behind the scenes? It is possible that the U.S., which now has more leverage in the game, will be able to push Russia on certain issues, but it's still unclear, Kate, whether they have the political will to do so.
Clarissa Ward on the Syrian-Turkish border right now. Thank you so much, Clarissa. Really appreciate it. Joining me now to continue this conversation is Ambassador Nicholas Burns, who's under Secretary of State for Political Affairs under President George W. Bush. He also, of course, served under President Clinton, apologies. Jack Kingston, former Republican congressman from Georgia, a former Trump campaign advisor, and now a CNN political commentator. Ambassador Burns, I gave you another job. Ambassador, it seems that they are, when you look at these two top diplomats, that they are offering conflicting messages. But from your perspective, from a diplomatic standpoint, are they?
Well, I think the problem here is that the Trump administration had to move its position, change it entirely last week with astonishing speed after the chemical weapons attack. The president decided to order the cruise missile strikes. I think that was the right decision. Now they've got to work out a broader strategy. I think that where Secretary Tillerson is probably reflects where the administration is, and that is, as he goes to Moscow this week, can the United States push Russia hard to agree to political talks, to a negotiation, perhaps to localized ceasefires to end this terrible civil war? Secretary Tillerson's going to have a tough job doing that, but he's mentioned over the weekend several times that's where the administration wants to go. So I think he and H.R. McMaster, who also said the identical thing, are probably talking about where President Trump is right now, but it's early days. It's going to take them a while, I think, to put together a bigger strategy.
Right, but Congressman, let me bring you into this because I do wonder kind of what the problem is here in terms of messaging, or is it messaging or policy? Because you have this major strike, you have the administration putting out their top two diplomats to the Sunday shows. Why aren't they in lockstep and on message? They know everyone would be parsing their words so specifically.
Well, you know, General McMaster's also sort of bridged the two statements, the one by Haley and the one by Tillerson, and he said, you know, you can do both of them. And I think that where they're moving to is a three-pronged process of now there's a military option on the table, along with the diplomatic process, which President Obama started, and then ramping up the economic process, which Secretary Ross actually alluded to with a fine to the largest, or second largest telecom company in China, a major, over $1 billion fine for doing business with Iran and Syria against the sanctions. So I think doing all three things at once is very important. And I agree with Ambassador Burns that Tillerson's meeting in Russia this week is extremely important. It's very, very important to stay engaged with Russia right now and hopefully bring them to a position where they'll stop playing games and they'll realize that they're not going to sign on to some phony deal the way they did in 2013 with the chemical weapons ban.
But real quick, Congressman, as it relates to Bashar al-Assad, does the administration want Assad out or not? Do you think it is a priority?
I think that stabilization and stopping the civil war is a priority, but as you know, if you look at it from, I'm coming at it as a member of Congress, we took out Gaddafi, we took out Saddam Hussein, it led to chaos, we changed the regime in Afghanistan and put in Karzai, and we did not have stability in Afghanistan. So I think the administration is very, very correct in being cautious with, let's just get rid of this guy and then there'll be peace in the valley, and that never has happened in recent times.
Yeah, it's just the clarity of message is kind of where there's a question. It's not really the clarity of, it's their prerogative, whatever policy position they want to take. Ambassador, Senator Graham, Lindsey Graham, he was on the Sunday shows. He says the fact that Assad is back up flying planes out of this very same air base that was struck, he says it's a message, a very clear message to President Trump. Listen to this.
If you kill babies with conventional bombs, it's still a moral outrage. Here's what I think Assad's telling Trump by flying from this base. F you. And I think he's making a serious mistake, because if you're an adversary of the United States and you don't worry about what Trump may do on any given day, then you're crazy.
That message from that message that Graham sees. Do you think that is the message coming from Assad right now? If so, what does it mean?
Oh, I think the message from Russia and Assad is defiance against the United States, and they're going to hold course. They want to seek a military victory for Syria in this civil war. I do think President Trump was right to strike at the against this the base that carried out the chemical weapons attack, but the administration, Kate, as you said, needs to get on the same page publicly. They need to have a bigger strategy for diplomacy, and I think this does call into question the refugee ban. We can't solve all the problems of Syria, but we should take in Syrian refugees as other countries are doing. It's the greatest, most horrific refugee crisis since 1945.
And that question now will linger, especially in the change of position we've seen in the president and what drove him to react and to order this strike. Ambassador, great to see you. Thank you. Congressman, great to see you as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kay.
Still to come, a West Wing power struggle between President Trump's closest advisors spills out into the public. The president telling Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon to work it out. But his family loyalty, Kushner's trump card. Plus, some big-name liberal leaders calling on voters to vote out a fellow Democrat now. Why is Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard skeptical that Assad is behind the chemical attack? And why are Democrats now saying that means she should be out? Work it out. That's the message from President Trump to his son-in-law, who's now an advisor, and the man who helped him win the White House. So in a fight between Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon, is blood thicker than Breitbart? Joining me now, CNN politics reporter and editor-at-large, Chris Cillizza. Great to see you, Chris.
Hey, Kate.
We always say the palace intrigue is fun for a lot of folks, for some, but what does it really mean, this type of infighting with this level of people within the West Wing? What does it really mean for folks at home?
I mean, I think what you're seeing is not atypical. It's just earlier than what we usually see. There's always some level of disagreement, particularly about big things like should the U.S. strike Syria in reaction to the chemical attacks or not. I mean, these are major policy decisions. If everyone agreed at all times, I think that actually might be more worrisome, frankly. But what you're seeing here is Donald Trump put in place a sort of four-part sharing of power. Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon are two. Kellyanne Conway, Reince Priebus are the other two. There are four people with different titles, but roles that are, if not the same, sort of ill-defined in between one another. So you're going to see some bumping up against one another. And I'll say, to answer your first question, you never want to fight a member of the president's family because you will not win that fight.
But here's what I've been wondering as we watch this. If the travel ban had worked out and hadn't ended up where it has, if health care had passed and didn't end up where it has, would Kushner and Bannon have been able to find a way to work this out amongst themselves without the boss stepping in?
Sure. I mean, look, if you've ever played on any sports team ever, you know that when you win, the tensions between people don't matter as much. When you lose, they're right there front and center. So, yes, if you had had a bunch of victories here, you might have. I would say, though, that it is important to remember Donald Trump's formative experience, other than business prior, his most recent experience here is building a show with Mark Burnett called The Apprentice. What did he do in that show, which is created in his vision? Have a boardroom situation in which a lot of different voices were arguing one against the other, and he came in and was the decider. So he's put in place this system that is going to, by necessity almost, create those levels of tension, and he comes in and solves them or tells them to work it out. That's his vision of a management structure. It's obviously got problems in it, and you're seeing those problems play out.
But, Chris, one of the other things that he did on The Apprentice is he fired people. I mean,
yes, he did.
This message was work it out, not you're fired. I mean, is part of this that Bannon, if he left, could be maybe even more dangerous to this White House as an outsider?
That's a really interesting point. Look, I think in some ways one of the keys to Donald Trump's success when he brought on Kellyanne Conway as the campaign manager and Steve Bannon as the chief strategist in the summer of 2016 was bringing sort of the outside voice in Bannon into the tent. Now, if that outside voice gets expelled out of the tent, yes, of course, anyone who has access to an entire media news site and can sort of direct the editorial content, if that person is not happy or looking to, make a grudge good against you, is problematic. That said, Donald Trump, I think, likes to make changes. He had 3 campaign managers. He's not someone who's afraid to fire people. But you are right, the Bannon thing is more complicated than just letting someone go.
It's complicated. That's definitely one way to describe all of those relationships. Great to see you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks. Coming up for us, an intense manhunt for a suspect police say stole more than a dozen guns. What we know about the manifesto that he sent to... Manhunt is intensifying for a burglary suspect who mailed a 161-page manifesto to President Trump. Joseph Jakubowski allegedly stole more than a dozen firearms in Wisconsin, and police fear that he may be plotting an attack. Now, CNN's Allison Cossack has been following this whole story. The more details come out, the scarier it is, and most of it's caught on tape.
A lot of it is caught on tape. What's also very disturbing is this has been going on for almost a week, and after more than 400 tips, and this going on for almost a week, no sign of him. But I want to show you some video and him actually talking to a cell phone, to video. These are some of the last moments authorities know where he's been. Take a look.
This letter, you might want to read it. There it is, you see it's getting shipped. Revolution. It's time for change.
I don't know if you could hear him. He was saying revolution, we want change. What he's holding there is that manifesto that you mentioned, a 161-page manifesto that you see there that he mailed to President Trump. An acquaintance of his also gave that same manifesto, it's believed, to the sheriff's office. In that manifesto, he lists grievances against the government. He talks about anti-religious views. It's a long laundry list of grievances that he spelled out in 161 pages. What also worries authorities is that, yes, he robbed this gun store, taking high-powered weapons, and I'm hearing a bulletproof vest as well. They're worried that he could be looking to do some mass casualty kind of event.
Yeah, 150-some law enforcement on the search yesterday,
Absolutely.
And the FBI is looking for anyone's help, offering a $10,000 reward if anyone gives them information leading to their arrest. Thanks so much, Allison.
You got it.
All right, coming up for us, moments ago, a historic moment for the country and a big win for President Trump. Here with the newest Supreme Court Justice, Neil Gorsuch, will be doing in his very first hours on the bench. Be right back.